Here's everything you missed in the Mandalorian Season 2 finale. Well, that was most definitely the way, Mando Fandos, because in the wee hours of Friday morning, The Mandalorian Chapter 16, The Rescue, brought Season 2's many simmering storylines to a head with unexpected reveals, answers to fan theories, and a post-credit scene that if you haven't watched already, you should pause this video, go back and watch it right this second, no excuses.
As you wish.
But what does that ending mean for Season 3? Well, we're going to break it all down, including the Easter eggs and references that you might have missed along the way in just a moment. But in order to do so, obviously, we need to spoil the heck out of this episode. So if you haven't watched it yet and you worry about that sort of thing, well, watch the Season 2 finale or else prepare to abandon ship. Alright, are all the spoiler phobes gone? Great. As expected, Din Djarin has a one-track mind.
I would like to see the baby.
This episode is focused on the Mando's mission, the titular rescue of the wee baby Grogu from Moff Gideon's clutches, and it wastes no time in getting right into the action. The episode opens with the whole gang crowded into the Slave One, chasing down Dr. Pershing in an Imperial Lambda shuttle, which they promptly disable with an ion cannon and proceed to board. One of the pilots confirms that Dr. Pershing is a clone engineer, as many fans deduced previously from the Kaminoan cloning facility symbol on his uniform. We also get a deeply uncomfortable bit of taunting and fascistic rewriting of history when the pilot taunts Cara Dune over her teardrop tattoo that signifies that she is from Alderaan. After asking if she knows how many millions of Imperial soldiers were killed on the Death Stars, he rationalizes the wholesale genocide of Alderaan by saying it was a small price to pay to rid the galaxy of terrorism. Anyway, the only good space Nazi is a dead space Nazi, and that man is very dead. The gang then heads to a mysterious planet full of giant refineries, which may or may not be Lothal, so they can recruit a few more party members for their rescue mission. They land the Slave One next to a gauntlet fighter ship belonging to Bo-Katan Kryze. Inside the cantina, we see a number of familiar alien races, including an Aqualish patron, a Rhodian, and several others, but most importantly, we see Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves, two of the three Mandalorians who we last saw in Chapter 11, the Heiress. Now, as you may recall, Bo-Katan is the rightful heir to the throne of Mandalore, and the previous wielder of the Darksaber before Moff Gideon done snatched it. Koska is a member of the Night Owls, the elite unit that Bo-Katan leads, but inexplicably missing is their teammate Axe Woves, which can mean one thing and one thing alone. He has also been kidnapped by Moff Gideon. I'm kidding, I have no idea where he is. He's on another mission or, I don't know, doing literally anything else. He's in the bathroom. When Mandalore comes up, Boba Fett references the fact that the Empire turned that planet to glass, a subtle reference to the Purge of Mandalore, and more specifically, the base Delta Zero protocol first mentioned in Star Wars Rebels' Rise of the Old Masters. Now, originally created by the Galactic Republic as this last resort measure, the Empire co-opted this brutal method of orbital bombardment for mass exterminations. It involves melting the surface of a planet into molten slag, effectively killing the entire population, a term you may also recognize from the Halo universe as glassing. Now obviously, this pisses off Bo-Katan and Koska. Bo-Katan challenges whether or not Boba's actually a Mandalorian, calling him a disgrace to his armor and saying that Jango's nothing more than his donor rather than his father. Boba calls Bo-Katan princess, indicating that he knows exactly who she is and what she means to the Mandalorian people, even though he doesn't care. Bo-Katan reminds Boba that he's a clone, saying that she's heard his voice thousands of times. It's really uncomfortable. We also get the first of several really weird sayings when Boba Fett laughs at Koska, saying,
All if that isn't the quackta calling the stifling slimy.
And if you like that saying, well, call now, because for the low price of watching the rest of this episode, you'll get such hits as A Real Skank in the Scudvi, Dag Ferrick, Son of a Mudskubber, McClunky, and many more. Things get awfully heated between Boba Fett and Koska Reeves, who threatens to beat Boba's ass so badly he'll be talking through the window of a Bacta tank, one of those omnipresent tubes of healing liquid which first appears in The Empire Strikes Back, following Luke's encounter with the Wampa. Anyway, their argument escalates into a rocket-assisted DDT, and then things literally get heated with dueling flamethrowers. So clearly these divisions among Mandalorians about what is or isn't the way, or who is or isn't an authentic Mandalorian, run deep. The fact that their people are scattered to the winds through a forced diaspora at the hands of the Empire has only worsened this fracturing of Mandalorian identity, and it's going to make the eventual reunification of the Mandalorian people a seemingly Sisyphean task. Now, once the dust settles, Din cuts a deal with Bo-Katan to give her Moff Gideon ship to help them retake Mandalore, and he also seemingly promises that he will join their efforts to reclaim their homeworld too, which seems like a pretty big hint at what to expect from season 3 or 4. She also reaffirms her plan to take back the Darksaber from Moff Gideon, which we learn in Chekhov's loading screen tooltip that it cannot cut through pure Beskar steel, which, I wonder if that will come in handy in, say, 15 minutes. We also learn the horrible truth about Moff Gideon's experimental murder mechs, the Dark Troopers. First introduced in the Dark Forces video game, their lore was expanded to include Phase Zero Dark Troopers in 2004's Star Wars Battlefront. The Dark Trooper project began by augmenting veteran Imperial soldiers with cybernetic enhancements, but now, as Pershing explains, the third generation designs no longer require a human pilot, they're just droids. And if you listen closely later on, it even sounds like they share the same sound design as the B-1 droids as well. But I digress. Now, although Bo-Katan was pretty clear that she wanted to murder Moff Gideon, Cara Dune tells her that since he is ex-Imperial Security Bureau, the New Republic kinda needs him alive so they can pump him for information. Now, this feels like an easy way to set up multiple storylines for Rangers of the New Republic, one of the upcoming spin-off series we learned about during the Disney Investor Day. It's going to tie directly into The Mandalorian and will culminate in a shared story event. Anyway, once in range of Moff Gideon's cruiser, they pull a fast one by having the Slave One pretend to chase the Lambda shuttle. And although Moff Gideon orders TIE fighters to scramble, the Lambda shuttle forces its way into the loading bay, whereupon Bo-Katan, Casca, Cara Dune, and Fennec Shand turn the unsuspecting stormtroopers into a fine red mist, while Boba Fett punches to hyperspace and jumps to safety. And from there, things begin to go slightly awry as Moff Gideon activates the Dark Troopers from cold storage, and we get this jarring dubstep theme that play whenever the droids are on screen. It's like really upsetting. Anyway, while this is happening, we get even more awesome action sequences as the gang pad their stats and up their KD ratio against stormtroopers who still can't shoot worth a damn. Meanwhile, Din makes his way to the Dark Trooper garrison and he encounters an RA-7 protocol droid, which you may know better as the Death Star droid. It kind of looks like a Beetleborg version of C-3PO, and you may remember it from A New Hope on the Jawa Sandcrawler, as well as in the Death Star itself. Anyway, we get to see firsthand just how deadly the Dark Troopers actually are. One basically punches Din to the point where he would almost surely have a concussion if not for his literal Beskar plot armor. Thankfully, Pedro Pascal remembers he also played the Red Viper on Game of Thrones, so he uses his handy-dandy Beskar spear to defeat the droid and then vent the remaining Dark Troopers into the cold void of space. When Din finally reaches Grogu, he finds Moff Gideon holding the Darksaber above the wee baby Grogu's head, ready to slice it in Grow 2. In a deliciously scene-chewing monologue from Giancarlo Esposito, we learn a truncated history of the Darksaber, including why Bo-Katan wants it back so badly.
Assume that I know everything.
He reaffirms that whoever wields the Darksaber has the right to lay claim to the Mandalorian throne, and given that Bo-Katan is the titular heiress from Chapter 11 and the previous wielder of the Darksaber, well, you better believe that she wants it back, and wants it back right now. Now, Din doesn't really care about any of that. As always, he's just this tired dad trying to find a personalized tutor for his gifted son, so he offers to leave the Darksaber with Moff Gideon in exchange for Grogu. Moff Gideon's kinda stunned by this, and he remarks that he actually already has what he needs from Grogu, his blood, which is blessed with rare properties that have the power and potential to bring order back to the galaxy, at least that's what he says. Now, if you need a refresher or if you're confused by this, as we saw during Chapter 12, The Siege, the Imperial Remnant is hard at work on some Sixth Sith science using Pershing's experience as a cloning engineer and Grogu's Force-sensitive blood to create a host body for Palpatine to operate like this midichlorian-filled meat puppet. Now, given how quickly Gideon attempts to murder Din after giving him his word, makes me wonder if he's lying about having everything he needs from Grogu, or if he's really just that villainous. I mean, honestly, could be both. Fortunately, as we learned earlier, the Darksaber cannot cut through pure Beskar steel, and that leads to the Mando doing more frame-perfect parries than Evo Moment 37. After defeating Gideon, Din brings him, Grogu, and the Darksaber to the ship's command deck, where we learn yet another sinister part of Gideon's plan. By defeating Moff Gideon in combat, Din has become the rightful owner of the Darksaber, much to Bo-Katan's shock and chagrin. Din wants nothing to do with this, though. He tries to give the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, but she balks at his offer because, as Moff Gideon explains, the weapon's true power lies in its story. Now, if you watch Star Wars Rebels, you might be confused about this because Sabine Wren gave Bo-Katan the Darksaber without fighting her in ritual combat. Although Bo-Katan initially refused this offer, she did eventually accept because the Mandalorian clans pledged they were behind her. So maybe in that instance she felt like she could accept it without bloodshed, but that was before they lost their homeworld and the Mandalorian people were all scattered to the winds. So, given that the Mandalorians are a proud warrior people, Bo-Katan likely feels the need to earn the Darksaber this time around through ritual combat, or else it may delegitimize her as the rightful Mandalorian ruler in their eyes. So, as it stands right now, Din Djarin is the current rightful leader of the Mandalorian people, even though he couldn't care less. And Bo-Katan is already brainstorming how and when she's going to challenge Din for control of the weapon, which is setting up an awfully juicy conflict I hope the show explores in Season 3 and beyond. And we'll have more about this on Nerdist.com as well for your reading pleasure, which I will link to in the description below. Now, fortunately for the Mando, he will have plenty of time to figure out what to do with that ding-dang Darksaber, because as our heroes find themselves about to be turned into human Jackson Pollock paintings by the Dark Troopers who flew back into the ship because, again, they're droids and they can do that, our heroes are saved once again this season by Deus Ex-Wing Machina. But not just any X-Wing. This is Red 5, and it belongs to none other than Luke Skywalker. That's right, we have our answer as to who Grogu reached out to through the Force on the Seeing Stone on Tython. And honestly, it makes sense because some of the other theories were admittedly a bit of a stretch. We know that Luke was on a mission to learn more about the Jedi and rebuild the Jedi Order during this period of time, and as one of the only known Jedi remaining in the galaxy far, far away, he is far, far and away the most obvious candidate to answer Grogu's call and teach him the ways of the Force. In a thrilling sequence, we see just how powerful with the Force he has become. He is a Jedi like his father before him, and just like his father before him in Rogue One, Luke slices and dices his way through unsuspecting enemies in the dark and foggy hallways of an enemy ship.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And in a less thrilling sequence, we see that although Luke is played by Mark Hamill, he's digitally de-aged in this weird CGI deepfake like they did with Princess Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin back in Rogue One, and it's still just as upsetting, and the uncanny valley is real, folks. It just makes my skin crawl. Like, I could feel my teeth just talking about it. Like, yikes. I mean, look, Sebastian Stan, he's right there. He already works for Disney half the year, so why not just have him appear? Oh, boy. Anyway, I digress. Luke reveals that he's here to take Grogu with him for Jedi training, and we get perhaps the most heartbreaking moment of the season. Din Djarin takes off his helmet to show Grogu his face for the very first time. It's an incredibly powerful, poignant moment, because Grogu is the only person in the world for whom Din would willingly take off his helmet, breaking a personal code of ethics that dictated so much of his behavior over the course of the show.
I never saw your face.
As Grogu goes off with his new uncle to learn about laser swords, Din promises the child that he will see him again, and it's a promise that I hope they honestly keep, because although this very much felt like a fitting conclusion to a major storyline told over the course of 2 seasons, the heart of The Mandalorian for me has always been the unbreakable bond between Din Djarin and Grogu, 2 people who have known great loss and managed to find one another in a galaxy full of bloodshed and horror. And speaking of bloodshed and horror, we all know how Luke Skywalker's school for gifted youngsters winds up, in flames with basically all of his students dead at the hands of his thick nephew Ben Solo. Although we are a long ways off from that actually happening, it doesn't help the sinking feeling I have from seeing Grogu go off with Luke, who already gives me a sinking feeling thanks to that weird CGI. And while I doubt this is their final goodbye, I am deeply curious how this is going to affect the ongoing tone of the series moving forward. But at least we get a cute moment with Grogu and R2-D2 to help ease the tension. But then again, maybe R2's just having PTSD, post-traumatic stick disorder, from his fateful encounter with Master Yoda. R2! And if you didn't stay all the way through the credits, well, you done goofed, because there is a post-credit scene featuring one heck of a reveal. Back on Tatooine, we return to one of the sleaziest dives in the galaxy far, far away, Jabba's palace. Except with the Hutt dead, it's now more like Bib Fortuna's palace. Suddenly, Fennec Shand introduces the Gamorrean guards to the business end of her blaster, frees a Twi'lek slave woman, and then makes way for Boba Fett to make his grand entrance. And yes, you heard that right, Jon Favreau snuck a McClunky in there for good measure, which you may recall as the weird new word that Greedo says when he dies during the Disney Plus version of A New Hope for some reason, so...
McClunky.
Why not? McClunky. Now, Bib Fortuna is genuinely shocked to see that Boba Fett is alive and well, and he tries to bargain with the bounty hunter, but Boba straight up murders him and takes the throne for himself, while Fennec knocks back some spotchka, and we get confirmation of a brand new Star Wars series coming in December 2021, The Book of Boba Fett.
I'll put on a good show.
That's right, folks, Lucasfilm had yet another ace up their sleeve that they did not reveal during Disney's Jabba-sized Investor Day announcement slate. Now, it's unclear if this is actually a spin-off series or if Boba Fett will become the titular Mandalorian in Season 3, given that Din Djarin's story has reached this natural pausing point. We'll have a deeper dive into what this means over on Nerdist.com, which I will link to in the description below as well. And while we don't have any other details about the newly revealed series, I imagine it'll involve Boba Fett staking out a name for himself as the new crime lord-in-chief of Tatooine, backed up by his second-in-command, Fennec Shand, who will also be putting the Bad Bitch back in the Bad Batch when that animated series debuts on Disney Plus at some point in the future. And honestly, this episode leaves us with so many questions about the future of The Mandalorian and how its focus will shift in the seasons ahead. We already know that The Mandalorian Season 3 has commenced filming, and whether or not that's going to focus on Boba Fett remains to be seen. Din Djarin, meanwhile, has to reconcile his pledge to help Bo-Katan retake Mandalore, as well as that whole wielding the Darksaber thing and the ritual combat that comes along with it. Plus, Moff Gideon is still very much alive, and even unarmed, he is incredibly dangerous as we saw over the course of this episode. Now, we have plenty to think about between now and December 2021, and we will keep you posted with plenty of deep dives, theories, and explainers over on Nerdist.com in the meantime. And that is everything you need to know about The Mandalorian Season 2 finale, Chapter 16, The Rescue. But tell us, what did you think about this episode and this season? What do you think is going to happen in Season 3? What is the Book of Boba Fett all about? Let's discuss in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, make sure you stay tuned to Nerdist.com.